White Lightning at Fun Spot Orlando is a small but mighty GCI Wooden coaster. Despite being overshadowed by nearby rides, White Lightning packs underrated airtime that competes with much larger rides. But does that airtime hold up against other rides nearby? In this video, I will review White Lightning and see how underrated it is. White Lightning was developed as part of a new expansion to Fun Spot Orlando. Since moving to its current location in 1997, Fun Spot Orlando has mostly been a family entertainment center, aka an arcade with go-karts. That's how Fun Spot has been for 16 years. However, Fun Spot would basically be irrelevant in the Orlando market, competing with other tourist traps trying to scrape dimes from Disney and Universal. So a big way to bolster itself for guests to tack onto a theme park trip, Fun Spot made a large expansion to include a small amusement park in 2013, and one of these rides would be White Lightning. White Lightning is a GCI Wooden coaster. The coaster stands 69 feet, 21 meters tall, has a top speed of 44 miles per hour or 71 kilometers per hour, and traverses 2,032 feet, 619 meters of track. Despite having modest stats, White Lightning is notable for being one of only 3 operating Woodies in Florida. It's almost well known at this point that wood coasters don't do well in Florida weather. As I explained before, Florida parks have a habit of running coasters into the ground from running all day every year in bad weather, especially when there's Florida man who might try to snort crack on an alligator in a dumpster. Yes, something like this has happened before. I actually witnessed this when I was at work one time. Well, it's even more of an issue for wood coasters because the material does not last as long as steel. And since Florida parks have terrible wood maintenance, most of them rot to crap and get brutally rough. This is why White Lightning is a unique breed in Orlando. And yes, White Lightning has gotten rough in the past. My first rides in 2020 had a few rough patches during the layout, but as of my rides in 2024, Fun Spot did a decent job at retracking and even brought in GCI's prototype Titan track, which is GCI's all-steel track for wood coasters. To help with its longevity, White Lightning uses a steel structure to help combat the Florida weather, and since the coaster is placed on the park's border next to the road, it has quite the visibility for tourists to pique interest and come in. White Lightning has a loose theme to trains between the train design and signs on the station, but that's about it when it comes to theming. Speaking of the trains, White Lightning uses 2 Millennium Flyer trains. These trains can navigate the course quickly and smoothly. The T-bars are comfortable and allow for airtime. Just make sure to hold on to the lap bars or else they'll staple you into oblivion. Now unfortunately, White Lightning only holds 12 people per train, and sometimes they might only run 1 train. The good news is that Fun Spot doesn't get too crowded. Even during the park's busiest time, after dark, the longest I've seen was probably around 30 minutes. But most days, White Lightning will be a walk-on. The ride begins with a small dip into the chain lift. You crest the 69-foot, 21-meter lift hill. Very nice. In the distance, you can see the Universal Orlando Resort from the top. The first element is this twisted first drop. In the front row, the drop provides a weak floater. However, the back is straight up bonkers. White Lightning is a definitive back row ride as the airtime and laterals are much stronger than the front. This is exemplified with the first drop as the back row has crazy ejector airtime with crazy laterals. Once you pull out, you have this banked hill to the right that tries to give some lats. This is followed by consecutive double up and double down. This trio of airtime hills has the most sustained airtime of the ride as the hills have sustained floater airtime. So this sequence has the most sustained but graceful airtime. Next is the turnaround. The rise has a sharp pop of air while the apex features a lateral tilt. Now the pullout of this turnaround has somewhat of a rough patch. For the most part, White Lightning is smooth enough for a wood coaster, which means the coaster is still kinda shaky. That's pretty much the case with every wood coaster because wood by definition has a rougher texture that causes that rumble and sway. Parts like this valley feel rougher than other moments. The next sequence is 3 bunny hills back to back. These bunny hills are smaller than the double up / double down, so the airtime is much sharper and stronger, but much less sustained. Then you traverse a twisted hill with a small double down on the other side. The twisted hill is very elongated, so the airtime airtime is on the weaker end of the spectrum, but then the extra down pops you up similar to the other hills on the return run. And this is the hill where GCI placed their Titan track. Based on my rides, this section rides very smoothly compared to the rest of the ride. This is also a good time to address the overall smoothness. White Lightning runs about as smooth as a wood coaster runs. Because of the rough texture of wood, White Lightning has that rumble and sway, as well as the few rough patches I mentioned. But compared to the other Woodies and even the same coaster in previous years, White Lightning is running about as well as a wood coaster can get. You then hit the speed hill with a sharp pop that's sustained for a split second. Short, but strong. Next is a banking hill that provides the lats. Only tips you slightly, but the GCI flare gives that extra kick. Finally, the finale is one more hill and a hop into the brakes. These last two hops offer shorter amounts of pops, so there's a quick burst of air into the brakes. White Lightning, while short, packs a rock-solid punch. Despite having the stats and look of a family coaster, White Lightning squeezes in more exciting forces than even coasters twice its size. It's the coaster equivalent to a midget who has a bigger fuse than a pack of C4s, aka my friend Angelica. Being a GCI, they tried cramming in laterals wherever they could, so the coaster has a bit more variety for an out and back coaster. And the airtime is great for a coaster where if it was anywhere else, it would get 0 from how short it is. This is why White Lightning is the best wood coaster in Florida. But before I give a ranking out of 100, I want to address Mindblower first. White Lightning and Mindblower are the only legit Woodies in Florida. We only have 3 in the entire state after all. Now, Mindblower overall has the better layout between the wilder forces and more unique elements like the 0G roll. But I believe White Lightning is a tad superior to Mindblower. And I'm not saying that because Mindblower runs about as well as a Rat 4 after all its wheels were slashed on broken glass. I've always loved Mindblower for its ride experience despite its extreme roughness due to my high tolerance for roughness, both before and after the RMC 208 retrack. However, my last ride on White Lightning was one of the most shocking rides ever. My last ride, in the back row at night, had extreme, borderline ejector airtime, some of the strongest I felt on any Woodie, much stronger than my evening rides earlier that day. So what would I rate White Lightning? I give it an 85 out of 100. For having such a limited layout, White Lightning does as much as it can in short order. The coaster packs solid airtime and laterals and is considered a good tier GCI Woodie. Now, Fun Spot by itself is probably not worth the trip alone, but you know what is worth it? Any of the Orlando parks, as they are within 10 minutes of Fun Spot Orlando, especially Universal, where it's quite literally across the highway from the park. Considering the long hours Fun Spot has, I bet most of you visit Fun Spot after a day at either Universal or SeaWorld. So if you're in town checking out the elite parks and you have 2 hours to kill, might as well take a crack at White Lightning, because White Lightning is a good coaster that's worth checking out. So that is my review of White Lightning. How do you rate this in comparison to other Orlando rides or Woodies? Leave all that down in the comments. If you like this video, which you made it to this point, so you probably do, please press the like button. Also, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications. That way, you'll be alerted next time I upload a video. Also, I upload more content on my other socials, so you should give me a follow over there. And sorry if my voice sounds a little whacked. I've been sick for the last week and I still haven't quite recovered yet. Finally, I have more videos listed here for you to check out. This is the Coaster Flood, riding out.